Hello, my name is Fiona Duncan. I was the chair of the Care Review and I'm now the chair of the Promise. Thank you so much for downloading this webinar and giving the Promise some of your time today. I'm really pleased that people continue to be interested in understanding how Scotland keeps the promise. The Care Review wouldn't have happened without an army of people, and the promise won't be kept without an army of people. So the plan for today is that Thomas Carlton, who you may also know from the Care Review and who is now also the Promise, will share some information on the Oversight Board, and we'll make sure that you know how to get in touch with us in case you have any questions. So what we're going to do is, first of all, give you a super speedy recap of the Care Review and an update on the work that's been happening since the Care Review closed. Then we're going to spend time on the Oversight Board. Then we're going to talk a little bit about other opportunities to be involved in the Promise. Then we're going to go over how all the opportunities fit together, and we're going to make sure that you know how you can get questions to us. So, are you ready? Let's start. You spoke to the Care Review. In fact, over 5,500 people spoke to the Care Review over the course of 3 years. That's included infants, children, young people, adults with care experience, and about 300 families. This was from all over Scotland, from all corners of Scotland, all 32 local authorities via a range of charities. And this included the paid and the unpaid workforce and corporate parents. There's never been a review of this scope done before in Scotland. It was phenomenal. And based on what you told the Care Review and what the Care Review heard, a lot of work was done to fully understand the issues that you raised, the issues that were troubling you, the issues that you thought were important. And as a result of that, the Care Review built an evidence bank. That evidence bank can be found online on the Care Review's website, which is www.carereview.scot. On the 5th of February, 7 reports were published, and these reports concluded the Care Review's conclusions. The first was the Promise, which outlined the vision for Scotland, and then the Pinky Promise, which is a child-friendly version of that vision. The plan helped articulate that in order for Scotland to keep the promise, there needed to be a whole new approach and a radical redesign of how we think of care. The Follow the Money report did just that. It tracked where the investment is in this thing that we call a care system. And the report called The Money was written from a wellbeing economy perspective to reflect how any investment in how we care for Scotland's children and families could be better placed. Then there was a report called The Rules, which highlighted there are 44 pieces of legislation, 19 pieces of secondary legislation, and 3 international conventions governing this thing that we call a care system. And the report called The Thank Yous aimed to acknowledge and thank the thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of people who made the Care Review happen. As many of you who tracked the review know, that the stories that the Care Review were told were retold through the lens of 12 composite stories capturing what children, young people and their families told the Care Review. And if you haven't watched them, they're available on YouTube. The Promise, the report that outlined the vision, is built on 5 foundations. That children and young people must be listened to, and that where children are safe in their families and feel loved, that's where they should stay. Where living with not their families are possible, children must stay with their brothers and sisters wherever it's safe to do so and belong to a loving home for as long as needed. The section on people was really clear about the importance of relationship and the importance of compassion and the importance of listening and decision making. And the section on scaffolding was clear that the scaffolding of support must be ready and responsive. So that's what you said, and Scotland listened. And then on the 5th of February, the First Minister made it really clear how important she considered the conclusions the Care Review reached about the need for a radical overhaul. This position got cross-party support and an outpouring of commitment to keep the promise. So with the First Minister's restatement of her political and personal commitment, as well as the need for this to happen as soon as possible, it was time for action. So to talk about the action, I'm going to hand you over to Thomas.
So thanks very much, Fiona. So I'm going to try and update everybody today on what the team has been up to since we published our conclusions back on the 5th of February. So as Fiona's already said, I'm Thomas Carlton, and I'm one of the 4 team members from the Care Review who transitioned to the Promise team, and Fiona Duncan was appointed back in May of this year as the chair of the new Promise Oversight Board. Prior to transitioning to the Promise team, there was a need to complete some closed-down activities of the Care Review. What were these activities? Well, they included creating an archive, which is now based within Strathclyde University. An asset register was compiled, of all our furniture, technology and equipment and reports, and anything that was able to be reused either is being used just now or will be in the future. The storage for everything else has been arranged. The Care Review website was also revised during this time and became the publishing platform of the Care Review's 500,000 word evidence framework. We completed the 2019-2020 budget process, and I'm happy to remind everyone of the fact that the Care Review was delivered on time and under budget. And as Scotland became affected by the global pandemic, the team was also asked to help inform the nation's response to the crisis. Next slide, thanks. But despite all of this, we are working hard not to lose momentum. We have continued recruitment efforts and have secured half of the Chief Design Officer of Scotland's working time. The Chief Design Officer is a woman called Kat McCauley, and she will be key in assisting us in achieving the aspirations we have for planning, design and implementation. Scott Bell, a Deputy Director within the Scottish Government, has been recruited to deliver the Scottish Government's response to the Promise. We know that the Government has one of the biggest asks and challenges in order to keep the promise. We're working hard to find a new host organisation for the team so that the team's continued independence of government is clear for all to see. We've developed an emerging promise strategy that seeks to engage everyone, including central and local government and the third sector and care providers, to inform the building of the plan, which will be considered by the Oversight Board by January 2021. Next slide, thanks. So devising and delivering the plan will ensure Scotland has a clear programme of immediate and ongoing work to go on with. The Promise will enable action across the country to enable children and families to become better supported. The next slide. So over the next 5 months, our engagement with stakeholders and those with experience of care will continue to shape and build the plan. Recruitment efforts will also continue to ensure the Promise team is resourced to support the required change. Next slide, thanks. The work over the next 5 months will seek to achieve these outputs. Although today's focus will be on the Oversight Board, it's important to be aware of our other intended outputs during this time, as they have a role in enabling the plan to become a reality. Next slide, thanks. So whilst the recruitment of the Oversight Board continues to work to achieve other outputs, our engagement work continues with those with responsibility to keep the promise, the best place them to contribute to the plan. The evidence base from the review will be built upon to understand any changes within the operating landscape. So, for example, any changes that have resulted as a result of COVID will be acknowledged. The evidence base will seek to identify targets that can assist in the monitoring and evaluating of the change being delivered. Work to best place the Promise Partnership to support change with its initial funding will continue, and our new home will become identified. Next slide, thanks. And then the following one. So when we speak of our engagement, I think it's important you have an understanding of what we mean by this. We are thinking there will be 4 phases to our current engagement. As you can see from the slide, webinars have already taken place this month to help organisations understand implementation and how they are best placed to respond. Engagement phases will continue until the end of this year, when all that has been heard will be synthesised into the plan. In January, the Oversight Body, the Oversight Body, which we are primarily here to discuss today, will have been recruited and will be in place and will be made up of at least 50% of its members will have lived experience. They will then have the opportunity to consider the plan. This ensures it is those with experience of care who will decide if the plan is fit for purpose and can help Scotland keep the promise. Next slide, thanks. So engagement is going to continue, and we'll continue utilising virtual meetings and webinars to enable that engagement. There is an engagement document that provides some information in written form. Please access this on our website if you're interested to do so. Next slide, thanks. As I've already said a couple of times, the time spent engaging with others is to inform the forthcoming plan. To achieve this, we're seeking to get the answers to a number of questions, and you can see the questions that we're trying to get answers to on the slide above. Next slide, thanks. So as Fiona's already highlighted, and I hope many of you are already aware, the care review created 12 composite stories, and these composite stories were created to reflect the experiences of those who spoke with us whilst we were reviewing Scotland's care system. This slide is a snapshot of one of those stories, of a girl named Isla's journey. It's hopefully clear by looking at the slide that the current context of care can't and doesn't serve her well enough. It is also clear that there are a lot of people involved, but little confidence that everyone understands Isla and what her view of the world is. Getting it right for Isla and others is what the care review demanded. The plan being delivered will enable a more caring way of caring for young people like Isla become a reality. The Promise team will offer support to all those required to keep the promise. Next slide, thanks. So in order for Isla to be cared for in a more caring and loving way, everyone will be required to work in a different way. The Promise will offer support and work to understand where organisations are at and what they need to achieve the change required. And we'll try and assist them in removing any barriers that get in the way of delivering the required change. Next slide, thanks. The plan will bring together all the pieces of the jigsaw and will enable the right things to be done at the right time. Those with experience of care will remain at the heart of all of the work. And this matters, if we move to the next slide, thanks. And this matters because children, young people and families cannot get the support they need if they are not involved in designing services in the first place. Children, young people and families must be part of decision making about how services work. And that leads me into passing back to Fiona at this point.
Thank you, Thomas. So I'm now going to talk about the Oversight Board, and I'm going to start with what the Oversight Board will actually do. As Thomas just said, all of the moving parts in and around Isla's life will come together to build one big plan that works for Isla. That plan will be collectively owned by all of the agencies that have to change shape, and it will be accompanied, as Thomas said, by a monitoring and evaluation framework. This means that the plan will have targets in it that matter to children and young people and their families, as opposed to targets that exclusively matter to the system. That might be figuring out how many care experienced children live in any single local authority. So although a local authority might be able to tell you how many care experienced children they have, they won't necessarily be able to tell you how many care experienced children live in their local authority from other local authorities. We've heard that that matters to children and young people because that means that they're away from home, they're maybe not going to their school, they're maybe not seeing their friends and family. And we need to make sure that we understand that so that we can build a plan that works for children and young people. So that plan will aim to be ready by early next year. And the first job of the Oversight Board will be to consider it, to look at it, to check it's fit for purpose, to check it's going to keep the promise. And when they're ready to agree that that is what it's doing, then they'll approve it. They'll ratify it, and that plan will become the plan of action for Scotland in order that it keeps the promise. After the Oversight Board has ratified the plan, their job then will be to maintain oversight of it, to make sure that it's been delivered on time and to the quality that's required. And they'll look at the targets that were set to establish whether those targets are being met, so that what matters to children and young people becomes the centre of the plan. They will look at the plan across Scotland, but they'll also look at the plan locally. So they'll check whether all of Scotland's meeting its targets and whether lots of different parts of the plan are meeting their targets. It will report to the care community and to Parliament, so it will produce 2 pace and performance reports on an annual basis, one to the care community, one to Parliament. But just reporting on whether the plan is delivering will not be enough to drive the change. So the Oversight Board will also use its networks and its relationships to push to make sure that Scotland does keep the promise and that the plan does become reality. They will have a job to work alongside all of the moving parts to make sure that they're doing what they need to do. So we'll meet 6 times a year, with the first meeting in January and then again in March, May, July, September and November. It'll have a rolling programme of work, so each agenda will be set in advance and it will know the team, the Oversight Board will know what they're looking at. After it's considered the plan, it will then look at the pace and performance reviews and then agree the content to the care community. And really importantly, in the first year of work, it will consider a localised accountability model of governance. And we're going to talk more about that in a moment. At least 50% of the Oversight Board will be care experienced. And as Thomas has already said, I'll chair that. So this plan that we're hoping will be ready by Christmas, and Thomas has already spoken to you about how the work that the Promise team is doing to deliver the plan, will be the job of the Oversight Board to check that it is fit for purpose. All members will be expected to give 12 days a year. That will include attending the 6 meetings, but also spending a day preparing. So they'll receive a pack of information at least a week in advance of the meeting, and they will spend a day reading that pack, thinking about that pack and understanding what it is the conversations are going to be about. They'll initially commit to a 3-year appointment, with the option after that of an extension of 1 or 2 years on an annual increment. And the reason for that is to make sure that if there's something that a specific Oversight Board member is involved in, a part of the plan that they've got a specific understanding of, and that plan doesn't end at the time that their term ends, then they can stay and see that through to conclusion. Just as the Journey Group and the Discovery Group, the Oversight Board will be expected to adhere to a set of values. They'll need to be committed to realising the vision of the care review. They'll need to be determined to support change and be brave and willing to hold those with responsibility to change to account. They'll need to be dynamic and flexible because the plan might not be delivered the way that we think it will be delivered, and we might have to change track or move faster or move slower on certain things. They'll have to be approachable so that if somebody wants to have a conversation with the Oversight Board about what they're doing and about the promise, that they're ready and comfortable and happy to do that. And they'll need to be really compassionate and willing to listen carefully to alternative perspectives so they can understand what it is that needs to happen for that change to happen and for Scotland to keep the promise. Collectively, they'll work together to do the analysis and to understand if the change demanded is happening. So we'll be looking for a mix of skills and experience. We'll also be collectively responsible to identify where that change isn't happening and where people aren't fulfilling their obligations, and really starting to understand what's getting in the way of change and identify how to tackle that. And collectively, they'll be expected to challenge poor performance. This will mean that between us all, we need to understand the national context, but also the local context of care. We need to understand the bridges, so what's making the promise easier to keep and the barriers, what's making it more difficult to keep. And all of that will be based on what's important to children and families, so not what's important to the system. As I said a moment ago, we don't think that an accountability model at a national level will be enough. So what we want to do is build local accountability structures so that we're understanding at a very local level what's happening. The care review identified that care isn't the same all across Scotland. And it also identified that there's certain places in Scotland it's easier to do some things and certain places it's more difficult to do some things. The local oversight boards will look at that and really understand that in a detailed way. They will also make clear what it is that the care community wants to hear through listening to the care community and what it is they want to report to Parliament. Everybody in the room will bring a personal or professional understanding of Scotland's system of care and how they're going to apply that to the responsibilities and accountabilities of the board. That doesn't mean that they will have to tell their story, and that doesn't mean they'll have to justify their position in that board. We don't expect that. We would like all members of the board to act as ambassadors of the promise. So be ready to go out and promote and represent the work externally and develop relationships with people who are charged with keeping the promise. So it's a big job, and it's going to be a difficult job. So we've thought carefully about what support members will get. All members of the board will get an induction and training. All members of the board will get access to free confidential counselling service, because we know that some of the conversations will be difficult and some of the conversations might need support processing outside the board meetings. They'll also get an annual check-in meeting with the head of governance and strategy. That's a woman called Fee McFarlane, and she was involved in the care review. Once a year, she will spend time with every member of the Oversight Board to just make sure that they're being as effective as they can be and that they're receiving all the support that they can. Plus, every 2 years, the board as a whole will review its effectiveness, so how it's operating as a team as opposed to how the individuals are operating. In addition to that, this will probably be identified through the check-ins with Fee, but it will also be identified up front. Every board member will get an opportunity to get a little package of support designed just for them So especially for board members who maybe haven't been on boards before, it's not a requirement that a board member has been on a board before. They might get a buddy or a mentor. Where specific packs of information are coming out with specific things that maybe the board member isn't familiar with, they'll get support with content or details in the board paper. So whether that's legal information, whether it's financial information, they'll get support to unravel that. It's really important at the very get-go that the Oversight Board recruitment process considers conflicts of interest. So if you're thinking of applying to be an Oversight Board member and you work for an organisation that has a responsibility to change shape, and you can imagine a situation where that organisation might not change shape fast enough or might not change into the right shape. We want to make sure that you're never in a position of conflict where you're in the room having to represent the organisation, or where you're in your organisation feeling you have to represent the promise. So we'll think about personal and professional conflicts, and we'll manage all of that in the application process. And whilst being a member of the Oversight Board doesn't constitute a public appointment, all members will be offered a pay of £225 a day. And that's to reflect the importance of the work that they're doing. That will be for attending all the prep, the induction, attending all the meetings, but also if there's other occasions where they're doing work on behalf of the promise, like speaking at conferences or representing the promise at meeting, they will be offered the same day rate. So as of Friday, a recruitment pack will be published, and it will be an open advert, and all the information will be in this recruitment pack, and we'll advertise it in the press and in social media. And we've recruited an agency to support us with the sifting of applications and to present a panel with a final grouping. And as I said earlier, we need a mix of people with a mix of skills and experience. So that's what FWB Park-Browne have been asked to do, bring together the right mix. Then there'll be an interview panel, and I'll be involved in that interview panel, as will be representatives of the care review. So if you're interested in applying, we've made it as straightforward as possible. What we want you to do is just answer a few questions. The first one is, what's your commitment to the implementation of the promise and the findings of the independent care review? That's the task that the Oversight Board will have, and therefore it's really important that when you're thinking about applying, you think about your commitment to achieving the change that the care review's reports asked for. The next thing is, what experience, skills and knowledge would you bring to the role of a board member? And again, you don't have to have previous experience of being a board member. It's the other experiences that we're looking for and understanding that we're looking for. We also thought it was really important that you thought hard about the most challenging aspects of making sure that Scotland will keep the promise, so that when you're thinking of applying, you're thinking about some of the difficult conversations that the Oversight Board will have to have, and that you've got yourself ready really to make sure that you're comfortable and happy with that. We also want you to think about what the opportunities are to support Scotland to keep the promise, because this is exciting and this is a programme of change that will deliver for Scotland's children and families. And we'd love to hear what you think that needs to look like. And finally, you're asked to tell the promise a little bit about yourself, what your interests are, what you'd like the recruitment panel to know about you. So the advert's live from Friday the 23rd of October, and it will be alive for 4 weeks. And we will promote it as widely as we possibly can. Responses to the questions can be made by letter, or if you prefer, they can be made just through a short video. So you can make a video of yourself and send it in rather than writing a long letter. The team at FWB will be looking at all of the applications and asking, is this person committed to the care review's vision? Do they understand the job of the Oversight Board? Are they willing and able to do that? And are they able to commit to the values? And that's the sort of information that they will be thinking about when they're producing a panel, a set of candidates to go to the panel. So everyone will hear back by the 4th of December. The interviews will be week commencing 14th of December. We're hoping the appointments will be made on New Year's Eve, and we're hoping that the inductions will take place in January, and the first meeting of the Oversight Board will also happen in January. And as Thomas said earlier, that aligns perfectly to the schedule of work to produce the plan. And I'm going to hand back to Thomas now to talk about other opportunities.
So thanks very much, Fiona. So hopefully everybody's heard our continued assurances that those with experience of care will remain at the very heart of this work. And will hopefully be obvious as a result of that the National Oversight Body will not be the only opportunity available to the care community to get involved. Can we go to the next slide, thanks? So as Scotland continues on this journey, more of the opportunities will become apparent. However, I want to talk about two of the opportunities that present at present. So the first of the two that I want to talk about, in addition to the National Oversight Board, is the formation of local oversight boards across Scotland. So these will be created across the communities of Scotland, and they'll liaise and collaborate with the National Oversight Board. And this will enable a local understanding of local need to be the guide to the change within communities. Next slide, thanks. And the second of the two opportunities is the Promise Design School. And in my own opinion, this is the most exciting opportunity that we've got available at present. And for me, the reason why it's so exciting is that it's going to seek to empower children, young people and families who have been touched by the issue of care with the skills and knowledge required to collaborate with service providers and service redesign. So if we move to the next slide, the school is going to try and achieve a number of things, and it's going to provide training for families touched by care, as well as those with experience of care. It'll also provide further opportunities to develop their own design skills. It'll also provide further opportunities to develop their design skill set and work on their continuous development. And this will ensure that the Promise Design champions, the graduates of the Promise School, can work alongside local areas and be central to the development of co-design and improvement work being undertaken. So this will mean that the graduates of the Promise School will work in collaboration to ensure that services become designed fit for purpose. Move to the next slide, thanks. So as a result of this, I feel that candidates or those participating in the design school will actually be able to pick up a number of transferable skills. And this slide seeks to illustrate what we think some of those transferable skills could be that people pick up. Next slide, thanks. So when I have more details and any further of the opportunities for the care community to get involved in this work, I and the rest of the team will seek to inform you at the earliest opportunity. Next one, thanks. So as we have discussed, we are really trying to build a team that will work alongside all those across Scotland, striving to keep the promise. But we haven't managed to complete that work yet. So this is an organogram that details the team we are trying to build, and each team member either does or will have a clear role and purpose. So this slide up here particularly, you're going to be able to see which roles have been filled by those who have transitioned from the independent care review. So they are coded in yellow, and what I celebrate is that 3 out of 5 of those who transitioned over to do this work do have lived experience. And if you look at the left-hand side of this slide, in yellow, you'll see the implementation and participation lead, and that's the role that I will be fulfilling, and you can see the rest identified. For the roles coloured in red, there is a recruitment plan underway to fill those posts. And if we move to the next slide, you'll be able to see that what we've been able to secure is one other person alongside us to do this work. A number of those coloured red will become green in the near future, because we're seeking to successfully place people within those positions. So I would just like everybody to be aware that for the roles that have not yet been filled, we will be seeking to recruit them in the near future and in the new year. And I would actively encourage anybody with lived experience to consider applying for any role that they feel they would be best placed to fill, and also encourage people to share these opportunities across their networks, because it would be great to ensure that your experience remains at the very heart of the team supporting this work. I'll now pass you back over to Fiona. Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas. So I'll just conclude the webinar with how this all fits together. So we've hopefully reinforced that this is a really big, complicated jigsaw of lots of different parts, all of the custodians of the system that have to come together and build a picture that looks like children and families. And in terms of the Promises commitment, the Oversight Board, as you know, is going to track that change and make sure it's holding everyone to account and produce 2 reports a year. The local oversight boards will track change locally. And the 2 oversight boards will work together. We're not sure how many oversight boards will be needed yet, but we know that the Oversight Board nationally will work with all of the local oversight boards. As Thomas just said, the thing that excites Thomas most is the Promise Design School. And the champions who are taking part in that will work with the custodians of the system in order to help them figure out what it is they have to do to change shape. That means if you're a member of the Promise Design School, you can't be on an oversight board because you can't be in an organisation as a design school champion telling them how to change shape and then on an oversight board telling them that they haven't changed shape. So that wouldn't allow you, if you're a member of the Promise Design School, to be a member of an oversight board, and vice versa. If you're interested in oversight board, you couldn't be on the Promise Design School. So as I've already said, there'll be about 20 members of the Oversight Board, and they'll spend between 12 and 24 days a year fulfilling their obligation, and they will be paid a day rate of £225. In terms of the local oversight boards, we just don't know how many there will need to be yet. We think that come the end of the year, when the plans come back, it will be clear what the governance structure needs to look like, and the National Oversight Board will be asked to look at that next year. But there could be up to 10. There could maybe be, each of them have 20 members, so there could be up to 200 opportunities to do that. We think that the most likely rhythm will be the same as the Oversight Board, so they will meet 6 times a year and people will give between 12 and 24 days in order to fulfil that. And we expect that there will be a day rate associated with that, and it will reflect what a local Oversight Board would do. So it will reflect the value that that is placed at. The Promise Design Champions will also be paid, but we don't know how much they'll be paid yet. And we're also not sure how many we can take in terms of the first cohort. But the Promise Design School will run for the first couple of years of the Promise, and it will recruit design champions that are looking at service design and system change, that are looking at national service design and national system change, and local service design and local system change. There will be a certain number of days for training, and then there'll be a certain number of days where the service design champions will be deployed as designers, and they'll be paid for all of those days. And then we're looking at about 15 Promise ambassadors, and we think each of those ambassadors will need really specialist skills and experience. So in our engagement with the justice system, we need an ambassador who really understands the justice system. So we think that will be a small number that will then do a small number of engagements a year, and we need to figure out what a day rate looks like for that group. So the biggest question we think in terms of you is, what's the best fit for you? What part of this jigsaw do you find most exciting? What part of it do you think you would be best able to do? It doesn't end here. We anticipate over the coming months that there will be other opportunities to get involved in the Promise, and we'll make sure, as Thomas said, that as and when those happen and as and when those are clear, that we communicate them as clearly as we possibly can and make sure that everybody knows that they're taking place. So if you've got any questions on any of this, you can get in touch with us through Twitter at The Promise Scot, or through via our website, or via email, hello@thepromise.scot. I'm Fiona at thepromise.scot, Thomas is Thomas at thepromise.scot, and most of the team are available with their name first and then at thepromise.scot. So you'll be able to track us down really easily. If you have any questions, please ping them to us and we will endeavour to answer them. The way you will get the quickest answer is going through hello@thepromise.scot. So we would just like to thank you for taking time today to listen to this webinar, and we hope that we've given you enough information to update you on what we're doing, and that you're interested in staying involved and that you'll help Scotland keep the promise. Thank you.